If you've been anywhere near the AI space, you have definitely heard of RAG, that's Retrieval-Augmented Generation. For a while now, it's been the way we get LLMs to use external documents. But what if I told you that whole method, the one built on vectors and similarity search, might just be on its way out? Yeah, we're going to dive into that because there's a new kid on the block, Vectorless RAG. And that really brings us to the big, provocative question we're going to tackle today. Is the era of vector RAG actually over? I know it sounds like a really bold claim, but stick with me because by the end of this, you'll see exactly why this is a conversation that's starting to happen. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll do a quick refresher on what RAG even is. Then, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of why the old vector way has some serious problems. From there, we'll introduce Vectorless RAG as the solution, break down how it works, and wrap up with why this might just be a total game changer.
Okay, so first things first. Let's make sure we're all on the same page. What exactly is Retrieval-Augmented Generation?
You can think of it like this. An LLM on its own is like this brilliant brain, right? But it only knows what it learned during its training. RAG is the tech that essentially gives that brain a library card. It allows the AI to go look things up in your documents. We're talking company handbooks, legal contracts, dense research papers, so it can give you answers based on specific facts, not just its general and sometimes fuzzy knowledge.
Sounds pretty great, doesn't it? Well, not so fast, because the way we've traditionally done this has some really big flaws. So let's take a look at the cracks in the foundation of this whole vector-based approach.
This is where things get a little weird. To make a document searchable, Vector RAG does something destructive. I want you to imagine taking a complex 500-page book and just ripping it up into thousands of little, random pieces of paper. They call these chunks. Now, throw all those scraps on the floor, and then try to find a single coherent answer in that absolute mess. That is, believe it or not, basically what we've been asking our AI to do.
And the way it searches through all those scraps is with something called a similarity search. Now, this is the key. It looks for pieces of text that are mathematically similar to your question. But here's the problem. Similar is not the same thing as relevant. It's basically a blind search. It finds a scrap that looks like a match, but it doesn't actually understand the context of what you're asking.
So, what's the fallout from this whole tear-up-the-book approach? Well, it boils down to three huge problems. First, you get massive context loss. You know, a critical sentence might get split right down the middle, just destroying its meaning. Second, you get a ton of irrelevant results. That blind search might grab a scrap that uses the same words but is from a totally unrelated chapter. And finally, it is just so inefficient. The poor AI has to rummage through that entire pile of paper scraps every single time you ask a question.
Okay, so after all of that, there has to be a better way, right? Well, this is where Vectorless RAG steps into the picture. It's not just a small tweak, it's a fundamental shift, a move away from just blindly searching for words to actually reasoning about what the content means. So let's put it side by side. It couldn't be clearer. Vector RAG is all about that similarity search. It's just pattern matching, finding things that look alike. Vectorless RAG, it's all about reasoning-based retrieval. It actually tries to figure out what you're really asking, and then it goes and intelligently finds the correct section of the document. We're moving from just matching to actual understanding. So you might be wondering, how on earth does it actually do that? How does it make that leap from searching to reasoning? Well, let's get into the mechanics of this much more intelligent approach. All right, let's go back to that poor, torn-up book. Vectorless RAG looks at that mess and says, "No way, we are not doing that." Instead of destroying the document, it carefully reads it and creates a super detailed, structured index. Think of it like an amazing, comprehensive table of contents that preserves the entire structure of the book, just as the author intended. And the process itself is honestly so elegant and simple. First, it indexes the document into that structured tree we talked about. Now, when your question comes in, say, explain our revenue growth from last quarter, the LLM reasons about it. It says, okay, revenue growth is a financial topic. Then it just navigates the index the same way you would to jump right to the finance chapter. And finally, it grabs that entire, intact, full context section and gives it to the LLM to write a perfect answer. You know, I love this analogy that the folks behind this idea used. They said it's the difference between a panicked student who just blindly flips through every single page of a textbook and the smart student
who takes a breath, looks at the table of contents, and goes directly to the chapter they need. One is just brute force. The other is intelligence.
So, let's bring it all home. Let's talk about the bottom line. What are the real, tangible advantages that this new method brings to the table? What's the payoff?
The benefits here are huge. First, there's literally no context loss because you never rip the document apart. It actually engages in human-like thinking. It reasons. It doesn't just match. It's also way more explainable. You can see exactly which chapter the AI went to and why. And all of this makes it absolutely perfect for complex, structured documents. Things like legal contracts, dense financial reports, and scientific papers, where keeping that original structure isn't just nice, it's absolutely critical for getting the right answer.
So, I want to leave you with this thought. This shift from vector to vectorless RAG, it's really more than just some technical upgrade. It's about changing the fundamental way our AIs interact with knowledge. And it forces us to ask a really important question about the future we're building. Do we want an AI that just searches for an answer, or do we want one that truly understands the question?